Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you. 2 dimes and a nickel. Here you go. $1, $2, 1 quarter, 2 dimes, and 1 nickel. Jenny Wallace watched while her neighbor, Mrs. Garrison, counted the money out into her hand. Her mind was already racing through ideas of what she could buy. "Thanks again for helping me clean out my garage," Mrs. Garrison added. "You'll come back and help me when I have my garage sale, won't you?" "I will," Jenny promised. "See you later." She skipped home and burst into the kitchen. "Mom, when can we go to the store?" "Whoa," Mrs. Wallace said. "What's the big rush? What's happening at the store?" Jenny rolled her eyes. "Mom, nothing's happening at the store. Mrs. Garrison paid me for helping her. Now I have money to spend. See?" Her mom looked over the bills and coins and nodded. "Very good. You must have been a real help to her. So what do you want to buy?" "I'm not sure. Maybe one of those tiny little dolls I saw, or a detective notepad and spyglass, or something else." Okay, Mrs. Wallace said with a laugh. "We need to go to the grocery store later, so we'll stop by Shoptown on our way." Jenny's mind raced ahead of the car as they drove through traffic on their way to the store. She knew Shoptown had a big toy department. "The dolls are on 3rd aisle, past the stuffed animals," she reminded herself. "After that, there's the remote-controlled cars, then the bicycles." As Jenny remembered the toys, she thought of something else she'd really like to buy. It was at the end of the last row. "I wish I could buy that flamingo nightlight alarm clock, but I know it costs $10, and I have only $2.50. At Shoptown, Jenny wandered up and down the aisles. "The tiny doll is only $2.49. I could buy that." The detective notepad and spyglass were on the next aisle. "It costs $2.25, but I have a little notebook like that one, and I can use Mom's binoculars when I want to play spy." Before long, Jenny found herself at the end of the last row. She stared at the alarm clock with the flamingo on top. At the end of the flamingo's long neck, a light bulb was hidden in the bird's bill. But the price tag said $9.95. "I wish I had $10, Jenny thought. By the time her mother was ready to leave, Jenny still hadn't decided to buy anything. As she watched her mom pay at the checkout counter, she thought of something. "Mom, I can't buy something that costs $2.50. What about the tax?" Jenny didn't understand all about taxes, but she knew you had to pay extra. Mrs. Wallace nodded. "You're right, but when you're ready to buy something, I'll pay for the taxes. You spend your money on something you want." "Thanks, Mom. When are we going shopping again?" While Jenny asked this question, she was looking at the rows of candy bars and gum. "I could spend my money on that," she thought. "We're going to the mall Saturday night," Mrs. Wallace answered. "You can shop again then if you know what you want." That night, Jenny and her mom read over her lesson. "Abram thought that everything he owned had been given to him by God," Mrs. Wallace said. Jenny thought about that. "God has given us a lot too, hasn't he?" "Yes, he has," Mrs. Wallace agreed. "We have a home and all the things we need, and each other. But your lesson is about what we give back to God." "What did Abram give back to God?" Jenny asked. 1/10 of everything he gained. Giving back 1/10 of what you earn is called giving a tithe. Suddenly, Jenny sat up straight. "Does that mean I should give some of my $2.50 to God?" Mrs. Wallace nodded. "If you believe he helped you earn that money, then you should return 1/10 of it to God. You would put 25 cents in a tithe envelope on the offering plate at church." Jenny thought about that. "Then I would have only $2.25. I couldn't even buy that tiny doll. I couldn't buy anything but candy or gum." Mrs. Wallace pushed her hair back. "I'm sure there are other things to buy, or you could save the money." "I don't know if I really want to give my money to God," Jenny thought. "I need it." The next Sabbath in the shoebox, Mrs. Shoe talked about Abram again. God gave Abram so many blessings he didn't really know what to do with them all. "Wow, that would be like having too many toys to ever play with them all," Chris said. "I'd like that." Mrs. Shoe laughed. "It's more like having a partner or a teammate who's taking care of you." Jenny raised her hand. "Mrs. Shoe, why does God need our money?" "He doesn't really need it, Jenny. The money we give for tithe helps pay for ministers and church work. But mostly we need to give the money to remind ourselves that God really owns everything, even us." By the time she got to church, Jenny had decided what to do. She got a tithe envelope and wrote her name on it. On the tithe line, she wrote 25 cents. Then she dropped in 2 dimes and a nickel. When the deacons came by, she dropped the envelope in with a smile. Inside, she was thinking, I'm glad God is my partner and that He gives me so much. I'm happy to give a little part of my money back to Him. That night, she and her mom were on their way out the door when the phone rang. Hello? Mrs. Wallace answered. Yes, Mrs. Miles, just a moment. She put her hand over the phone. Jenny, Mrs. Miles wants to speak to you. Jenny took the phone. Hello? Jenny, Mrs. Garrison told me how you helped her with her garage cleaning. I've decided to clean my garage too. Could I hire you to help me tomorrow? I'd be happy to help you, Jenny answered. She was still smiling when she got in the car. I'll be making more money, she told her mom. Hey, maybe I can save it and buy the flamingo lamp after all. Her mom just smiled. Then Jenny remembered something else. God is blessing me the same way He blessed Abram. Am I ever glad that He's my partner?
The story you have heard today is from the Shoebox Kids Bible Stories, written by Jerry D. Thomas and used with permission from the Pacific Press Publishing Association. If you're interested in any other books published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.
This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.